Everyone has introverted feeling or introverted thinking in their primary function stack. You have one or the other. However, the higher the introverted feeling or introverted thinking is in your function stack, the more of a dominant and primary role it is going to play. And therefore, the effects of having introverted feeling or introverted thinking higher in your function stack will be significant compared to those who favor their extroverted feeling or their extroverted thinking over the introverted opposite of it. So, for the ISFP, or let me back up and say it this way, for all IPs, introverted feeling or introverted thinking will be their first function. And for all EPs, it will be their second function. Now, why does this matter? What is the significance of this? When a person favors introverted feeling or introverted thinking highly, that person will tend to prioritize his or her own needs, thought processes, wants, desires over those of the group, over those of the tribe, the people with whom they associate, the greater population in general, with notable exceptions, of course, it being like I'm a high FI user, but I'm going to prioritize often the needs of my children over my own needs. But it doesn't often stretch beyond that for me. I'm going to prioritize my own likes, my own wants, my own needs, my own desires. And for the high TI person, like the ISTP or the INTP, they're going to tend to prioritize their own logic, their own intelligence, their own thought processes over those of the group. Now, for the EPs, where this introverted feeling or introverted thinking is second, they will also tend to prioritize their own wants, needs, or thought processes, values, if you will, their own, those things that matter to them. They will tend to prioritize those over those of the group. However, they will tend to be a little bit more balanced than the IPs. The IPs are going to tend to be all in on, if it's FI, their own wants and needs and values, and if it's TI, their own logic and thought processes and intelligence and way of doing things. So the IPs are going to tend to highly prioritize themselves over others. The EPs will also tend to prioritize themselves over others, but will at least usually see the benefit of considering the group or trying to strike some sort of balance between themselves and the group. Now, the net sum of this in my mind is what I would call a live and let live attitude. The IPs are going to have a very strong live and let live attitude. You leave me alone and let me take care of myself, and I'll leave you alone and let you take care of you. The EPs, I think, are also going to have this attitude, but it'll be a little bit more balanced. They'll tend to see a greater value in allowing the group to influence them and taking the time to influence the group. However, they will still, if put to the test, generally speaking, prioritize themselves over others. Now, if we contrast this with the EJs and the IJs, I think that what we will tend to find is that they have less of a live and let live attitude and more of a tell me how to live and I will tell you how to live attitude toward life. Now, the IJs, again, are going to be more balanced in this area, much like the EPs, except balanced on the other side. They're going to tend a little bit more toward the let's care about the needs of the group. Let's take into consideration the wants or the desires or the thinking processes of the group and prioritize the group's needs slightly higher than their own. I'm speaking of the IJs as a general rule. The EJs will tend to be off the charts on I need the group's thought processes to help me hone in on what I need to do, or I need to know the group's values to know what I value. They will tend to be sort of off the charts in that realm. And then, of course, the the outplay of that is that they will tend to then sort of push more their thought processes and their values on others. But it's not frequently, or a lot of times, it's not really their own thought processes or values they're pushing. It's that they have sort of taken a poll of the group and figured out, what does the group think, TE, or what does the group value, FE? Okay, now that we know what quote everyone thinks or everyone values, we need to make sure that everybody gets on board with that. And so we're going to sort of force that on others. There's that you tell me how to live, I'll tell you how to live sort of mindset. Nothing could be further from the general demeanor of the IP than you tell me how to live and I'll tell you how to live. That is frequent among the EJ thinking or way of living. The IPs are not going to want to be told, if an IP like an ISFP or an INFP has that FI at the top, they're not going to want to be told what to value. They're not going to they're not going to want to be told how to feel. They're going to say, look, I value what I value and I feel what I feel. And don't try to force your values and your feelings on me or tell me how I should feel. And I will return the favor. I will not try to slam into your face what I value or tell you how you should feel or what you should value. And for the TIs, the ISTP and the INTP, they're also going to be more like, don't tell me what to think. Don't tell me how to make things work. I will figure that out on my own. I understand. I don't necessarily need your input, and I will return the favor by not telling you necessarily what you should think. Now, those exact same principles are going to hold true for the EPs, only to a slightly lesser degree. So for the ESFP and ENFP, they're going to tend to develop their own value systems and have their own way of feeling in every situation. And they're not necessarily going to take very well to people telling them what they should value or how they should feel, but they will be able to have that back and forth with the group better than the IPs will. And with the ENTPs and the ESTPs, the same thing. They're not necessarily going to take well to telling them what they should think or how they should ration or process information, but they will do it a little bit better. They'll be able to have a better back and forth with the group than the INTPs or the ISTPs will. So the live and let live attitude, I would say, is sort of an IP thing above all else. And then the EPs will have it next, but they will see the value in being balanced in that area. The IJs will tend a little bit more toward the you tell me how to live, I'll tell you how to live, or let's all figure this thing out together, basically. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. Let's all figure this thing out together. The IJs will tend a little bit more to lean toward the let's figure it out together, but still with a balance of I need to figure some things out on my own. And the EJs will tend to be very much all in on the, hey, we're all in this together. Let's all figure this out together. We need to solve our problems and live our lives as a group, a community type situation. Now, for the IPs who are very live and let live, the EJs can often come off as very pushy because the EJs tend to see the way the group wants to function, and then they want everyone to sort of be assimilated into that, like a drop of water in a bucket. Come on in, the water's fine, we're all in this together. And the IPs, I think, very much bristle against that. The EPs do to an extent, but again, I think they see the balance a little better. The IPs are so independent with their lead TI or their lead FI that they're very much opposed to anything that looks like being assimilated, that looks like becoming a cog in a system that looks like anything that might be construed as losing one's own identity for the sake of the identity of the group. I think EJs are very good at assimilating into the group identity and then identifying with that group, whereas IPs are much more apt to want to break away from any sort of what they might perceive as a sterile, cold group where the identity is lost for the sake of the larger entity. This is not something IPs want. IPs want to live according to their own values and feelings, FI, or logic and reasons, TI, and they do not want to have any other values or logics forced on them, and they also do not necessarily want to take theirs and force it on others. Now, I will say one caveat to that with the IPs is that as we go through life, especially when we're younger, and we discover something that we find to be extremely enlightening or valuable or true or whatever, all human beings, I think, have a tendency to want to share that. And sometimes in the zeal of learning new information and finding out how positively it affects oneself, we have a tendency to want to share that information so that other people can be positively affected. So an IP will do that, but it's not because they want to create some group where everyone is equal and where we're all assimilated into one giant machine or one giant, community. It's more something along the lines of, wow, this was amazing information that really benefited me. I'm just going to share it with people because then they might benefit from it too. And I think many IPs would be happy to say, here's your information. You benefited from it? Great. That's awesome for you. I'm still going to be over here by myself doing my own thing. So the IPs are very much the live and let live community, or they're not a community, really, a bunch of individuals that are constantly trying to break away from the group and be alone by themselves with their own values or their own thought processes, saying, let me live the way I want, I'll let you live the way you want. And I think the EPs have a large measure of that in them too, but they can see how it can be overdone, and it can be overdone. IPs do overdo it to a pretty large extent. Leave me some comments below. Let me know if this has been your experience or what you think about this. Thank you so much for watching. Do please subscribe if you have not already. I would really appreciate that. And please click the little like button. Thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome day. Bye now.